more than independence and relationship and connections. And one of the people that I've admired over the years is Tom Heaton, and well, Tom's senior by 15 or 20 years, but even so, he brings a whole lot of experience, and some of it are experiences that very few people have. And I've known Tom as a good preacher, good pastor. If you want to read his blog, I appreciate it every time I get a chance to read. Tom, welcome. It's great to have you with us today.
It's nice to be had. No, I mean, it's good to be here with you, Phil.
Oh, Tom, we talked earlier about Mission Guatemala. We could talk about so many things. We could probably do 2 weeks just on Evansville. But, and goodness knows, if we were to talk about the church and mission and justice, well, we might have, who knows, a marathon program. But I want to go to a subject that I know may be tender, but I think could be very helpful for those who listen to this podcast. You're in the unenviable position of having had two sons, and both of them died tragic deaths. Jose and Manny, different circumstances. Um, can you share a bit about not so much, well, tell us about those young men, but about your response as a Christian, as a pastor, to these tragedies?
Sure. Jose, uh, Jose was my oldest son. He, uh, he was my challenge. I think, there might be some parents that will know
Every
what I
parent.
mean when I use those code words, but, yeah, he was just, he was a challenge. Came into my life when he was 12 years old. But, just, uh, the biggest thing about Jose was I often thought, he would always get himself in trouble at school because he was just loud. Jose was a kid that could walk into the room and you would know he was there. I mean, just his presence there somehow, you know, um, was loud. Amazing athlete, so much fun to watch play soccer. Just, I mean, he ever since he could walk, he was kicking a ball. Um, Manny was quite different. Was 5 years younger than Jose. Um, a little bit of an introvert, but he was. I always said he always kind of had this. Uh, these are my churchy pastor words, but, kinda always had this real sense of justice. I mean, whenever he would see someone being treated unfairly or something, that was unfair, I mean, it really bothered him, and he would, talk to me about it, and it would kinda call him out. Hard worker, worked for Toyota. They loved him, because he was always there early and stayed, stayed late, and doing his, factory position there. But kind heart, real sense of justice, and he always got upset for some reason when I always said he was funny. I think he viewed that as like not a compliment, but I always meant it as a compliment. But anyway, that's a little bit about both of them. I forgot the second part of your question though.
Well, tell us how they were both killed.
Yeah, they both, Jose was shot. Both of them were killed by acts of violence, both by guns. So I've got some strong feelings around that. Jose was in Guatemala when this happened, while I was in the United States. Um, I have a police report which is pretty lightweight,
Mm.
about what happened. Uh, to their credit at the time, the U.S. Embassy did the best they could to help get information, but it's just very difficult in that Guatemala system there. But he was riding a bus and someone came on the bus with a gun, and he, had 3 gunshots that ended up, ending his life. Um, my younger son, Manny, was out with someone, fishing at late at night, and ended up being, murdered by them, and, uh, as we, things unfolded around that, it was part of a identity theft, money stealing scheme that, this person thought they were so smart, so smart in doing, and they would never get caught. And when they were about ready to get caught, they ended his life so that he wouldn't turn them in. So that's kind of the nutshell. All of these stories, go. I spent months trying to decode a lot of the stuff. They go far deeper than that, but that's pretty much the summary of both of them. Again, the details on Jose's death are just pretty sketchy still.
So as a parent, as a Christian, as a spiritual, on a spiritual journey, talk about what these 2 violent tragedies have meant to you in shaping who you are.
I, I feel like I mean, initially just I responded to, I think to both of them with just, this deep sense of grief and loss. So much of your life is dedicated and, poured into your, into your children, and
Right.
trying to make them successful, and in term, whatever success means. That's always kind of a weird word, but to make them successful, and and by that, you could be judged as being a successful parent because you had successful children. But there was certainly a deep sense of grief, a deep sense, of loss. Uh, Everything with Manny is just so much more fresh. I mean, that was 3 years ago. And it's probably a little easier for me to talk about that than with Jose. But I I think I became, just so much. It's one of these things I preach, I talk about, I believe, but when it happens to you, uh, you become more aware of it. But just the deep way in which you know God's presence through all the people that surround you and care about you and care for you during especially the most difficult times. And so I was fortunate to really be just surrounded, by a lot of folks that supported me through that. I I did not have a deep sense. You would think I would, but for some reason I have not had a deep sense of anger around what happened to Manny. I think part of that comes from my understanding that, um, if I get angry and stay angry at the person who did this, they continue to have control over me. I mean, they're controlling my life, and they're the one causing the anger. And they already took Manny from me. I'm not going to let them take
There you go.
anything else from me, and that anger. But from and I mean it. Feel like I'm just babbling here and talking,
No,
but
no, no. So
and sometimes the support and caring came from places that you might not necessarily, expect. But where Manny died, it was on state property. It was in a state park, and so it fell under the jurisdiction of the Department of Natural Resources. And a detective for the Department of Natural Resources, a man named Trent Stinson, um, came and knocked on my door, and told me what had happened. Uh, I don't remember 10 minutes. There's 10 minutes there that I just don't remember anything. But and then Trent told me because it happened on DNR property. DNR was in charge. He was gonna be the lead detective on it, and, honestly, after that, my thought went to, "Oh my gosh, DNR is in charge? Barney Fife is going to be the one, investigating, all this," but I was so wrong. I was so
Right,
wrong. I was just
right.
terribly wrong. Um, and, you know, Trent Trent journeyed with me from that day until the very last day in the courtroom, and still every few weeks, I'll get a text message or something, from him, and, again, I kinda feel like that's just God, that's a God thing. That's God's, presence, kind of showing continuing concern. And I don't know. I could talk. I feel like I'm kind of all over the place because
So,
it's a
no,
relatively new experience. But I think if you're just willing to open your eyes and just see and realize all the people that are there for you, I think it's just all part of God's warm embrace around you at such a difficult, time.
what did you learn about prayer or about faith or even about being a pastor?
Uh, I think, I, you you and I have talked some about this, prior to this, and you've seen some things that, I've written, but, I think, in terms of prayer, uh, I think it just helped me, realize that, that, the God that I know and the God that I want to worship is not a God that's manipulative, pulling strings, making things happen. It's kind of the puppet master God. If you would want to use that phrase, but God was always. I feel like God was always present in the midst of my hurt, and as I cried, God cried with me, and come to understand that prayer is a lot more about pausing and taking the time to be present, with the one who is always present with you. And that's been, just been, super helpful. Uh, it, in terms of ministry or, just being a pastor, I'm not an active pastor now, so I can't say like I do, do this or do that differently. But, uh, I do think it I think anybody that's been a pastor, every time they walk into a new or different situation, they always walk away from it having just a deeper understanding and feeling that, people allow you into some of the most sacred moments, of their life. And, I I think probably as a pastor, just in terms of speaking and things, it's allowed me to identify and to be able to speak more about God being present in those, darkest and most difficult moments.
So, what do you say when you preach?
Well, I don't a lot anymore, but I just always, I, it depends. I guess it depends on the moment. I go bonkers at people talking about, those phrases like, you know, God must have needed him more than you did, or,
Oh,
all of the and just all of the kind of, cruddy theology, that's there. My preaching around this or speaking around this, tends to be more that I don't believe God had anything to do with Manny's death. I think God had everything to do with being present during, uh, present with him at that moment, present with me and all who loved and cared about him, after his death, just surrounding us with other folks that, people that care. Don't know if that did a good job of answering your question, but it's kind of probably
um,
something I'm still processing, Phil.
listen, Tom Heaton, it's a great answer. It's something that's helped me just listening to you right now, and I know will help others. The God who is always present even though we're not aware of that.
Oh, I mean, yeah, the God is, God is always present, always with us. My one of the people who I think from your time at Claremont, Marjorie Suhaki, a great, I always say one of the greatest theologians of the past 100 years that was not an old German man. But she always said, and I believe this, God is at work in the world. I'm not going to quote her exactly, but I'm pretty close. God is always at work in the world, trying to bring about the best possible good. Sometimes the best possible good isn't very good, uh, but God is still present with us in those moments, trying to make the best out of difficult situations, even when sometimes you know, the the best the best that can happen is an arm placed around your shoulder.
Yeah, yeah. Marjorie is a remarkable theologian, and, I find myself these days concerned about our nation, and there's no nice way to talk about it. The bad theology that so many people seem to think is going to give them, points in heaven or credits toward eternal life, and, uh, Martin Marty said, one of the challenges of our time, he's now deceased, but when he was living, he said it's, when, people who know the least about the faith are the ones who think they know how to teach the faith.
Preach.
And we're in a time when somehow Christianity is being, there's a identity theft that's gone on. And people are thinking retribution is something that, that Christians should be engaged in, and not a and not an ability to, well, your quote from Marjorie, is so apt that sometimes the very best thing, you know, is still a tragic thing.
Right, right, because God God does not manipulate the universe, to turn out the way God wants I, uh, I get bothered, whenever I hear many people preach or speak about, God being all powerful,
Mm.
because in its purest sense of understanding, it means God has all the power, and that simply isn't it simply isn't true in the sense that, you know, I have I have, power to make good decisions and bad decisions, to make, decisions that I want to make, and the decisions God wants me to make. The flying of a plane into the World Trade Center, was an act of, an act of power, and, so, we have the power to do good, and the power to do not so good, and, like you, am seeing a whole lot of not so good not so good, you know, these days, but
Well, the wonderful preacher John Claypool used to say, "The worst thing is not the last thing." And I never quite got all that he meant by that, but I get close to believing it. Um, I like you, as pastor, have walked into situations, tragic situations. I could speak of one just briefly, where I knew there had been a suicide that had occurred, and a young boy, teenage son of this person, fell into my arms. He was, in the confirmation class I was teaching, and on that dark winter night, I wasn't sure I believed in a God. And, then the family gathered. The sheriff got there after I did, and, they asked me to pray.
That's a tough prayer. That's a tough prayer.
Yep, and I stumbled through, but somehow, um, I think praying, as you have said, is bringing your brokenness and seeking the heart of God, really, it's
And I mean, and also realizing and knowing God God knows those words before they leave your mouth, yet God receives them with the love and the care that only God can receive them.
yeah. Well, thank you, Tom, for sharing, this, uh, vulnerable, reality in your life, and I know there are many people who are struggling with grief and brokenness, in other ways, or maybe even in tragedies like losing Jose and Manny, and your words are words, that I believe bring, perspective and healing and hope even in such tragedies, so thank you, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me be with you today.
Yeah. So this is Phil Amerson, with the Belonging Exchange. We will put up, ways to connect with Tom, his, not only the website for Mission Guatemala, let's see if I have it. It's missionguatemala.com.
Perfect.
And, there's also, reflection pieces or blog pieces that Tom writes. I encourage, the audience to read those. Thank you, Tom Heaton.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you.
Bye-bye.